kind of wondering how many of you remember this particular movie here. I think it was released in 2017. It was this particular franchise here. The final chapter where we have Isaacs here proposing. The end, folks. We're talking about literally restarting everything. And what was his plan? It was to release something. All right. This might help you understand what we're talking about, folks. We're talking about here the corporation. They used this umbrella as their logo. And as you can see here, I mentioned this literally 6 weeks ago. I talked about this a long time ago, right when we all started talking about it, actually. Maybe it was 2 months ago. I don't even know how long ago it was. At any rate, you can see here the exact same logo on the laboratory that happens to be, what was it, 3 miles from where this all started, right? And we said, well, obviously this is where it came out of. It's not exactly rocket science. But interestingly, also, we have Bill here. This guy was actually putting money into that laboratory. That's kind of curious, isn't it? Yeah, just a little bit. Right? And sorry, but I think my computer is not liking the fact that I have 60 windows open. That's why it's doing that, as you can see. So we're going to go over a number of things, as you can imagine. But you get kind of the idea here, right? So you have this proposal here. This is a movie literally telling you what they're doing right now, folks. And of course, we've already been discussing this for a while. But it's interesting because I haven't talked about this logo in a long time. And I found it to be very curious how there was this scene from this movie. I recall this scene. And, you know, I had forgotten about it. I actually did a review on that video, or that movie, like 3 years back on my other channel. But getting onto some other stuff, because we're going to cover a lot of stuff here, folks. I just wanted to point that out. Just kind of curious. That's a little strange, right? All right, so here we go. Louisville. Apparently, now they want to make these people have bracelets that lets them know where they're at all times. Now, of course, this is the line we're talking about, folks. There's a difference between this kind of thing and something where you voluntarily, you know, decide, hey, look, I'm going to do this, right? Like, we're so used to this, but this should be something where we're out in the street talking about this, okay? This particular company, you might know who they are, releases this type of data to the powers that be. So about you, by the way, on your phone, you have apps from this particular company right here. Guess what? They're telling everybody where you're at right now. That's different. So you see the difference? You already have apps on your phone where they're already telling everybody where you're at. And if you're in a city that says, hey, look, you're not allowed to do this, that, and the other, and you've been doing that with your phone on you, they're going to release that information to them. There's a big difference. You see, this is what I'm talking about. This is the line I'm talking about. Okay? They're giving it all up, folks. 131 countries worth. We're not talking about just here in the US of A. We're talking everywhere. They're giving all that information up. Okay, so might not want to have your phone on you, especially if you're in a location where it's like that. Or just uninstall all the apps from that company, which is pretty much a lot of apps. You know what I mean? That's not as if they're not trying to charge you to use their map services now anyways. I haven't used their map services ever since. You know. Oh, let's get on to some other stuff here, all right? We got a lot of things to cover. And of course, this does not want to load right. Okay, this is awesome. Can we load, please? Okay, let's go this way. Let's just do it this way. I'll just click on a new article. Okay. I love this. This is awesome. All right, here we go. This is a new thing that came out. that is kind of interesting that we've not heard before. Apparently, this strain can cause this now to your brain. Okay? And it causes people to not realize what's going on. So there's a lot of strange things around this thing, man. Actually, there's a lot. I've seen a lot of really strange things, okay? And I'm not going to get into all of them here, but there's yet another example. This might explain why people are doing things like this. There's this video that just came out. People are starting to do these type of things, okay? And then it shows all these clips of people just, what in the world, folks? Where was it? There was some guy standing on top of his car here. That was kind of interesting. Where was that at? I don't even remember where that was. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, this one. I heard about this. So some guy, he goes, all right? And some other guy says, hey, you should be wearing one of these. And he's like, and then they apparently started going back and forth. And then next thing you know, one of these guys pulls out this, as you can see here, if you can see that. He pulls out one of these, okay, over that whole topic of what was happening there. So I just heard about that too. Another guy did this, an engineer with a train. Look what he did. He actually got the train off the tracks because he thought essentially this ship right here, this NS ship here, was actually being used by the powers that be to, I don't know, do something. He had some theory about it. I don't know. I'd have to look into it a little bit more, but that was another story that just came out. And there was a lot of stuff like this. There's a guy, where was that one? Yeah, here it is. Just some guy standing on top of his car for whatever reason, I don't know. So you get a lot of these strange stories like that. Also, you have this. This was kind of curious. Now, I don't know what to think about this. This guy works for one of these outlets, and I don't know what to think about this. But it is kind of curious. It kind of fits what we're talking about here. He says he has these weird, phantasmagorical, dreams or experiences as a result of this, kind of like making you, think strange things. And maybe that's related to this here. Maybe this is happening to him. I don't know. But there's a lot of strange things like this. And I wanted to point out some other ones that just seem, it's like the overall, everybody's acting different. Okay? I'm really getting this impression. But I thought this was interesting as well. Home box office. We're talking about movies. You can see here weekend 11. Okay. We're talking about, look at this. You got just standard 60 million, 9 million. You see all these movies, right? Obviously. So, but then you go to week 12. Look at this. 2 movies. $11,000 was made in weekend 12 for the home box office for all of Hollywood. Weekend 13, $6,000. So you can see, obviously not making a lot of money. Yeah. Then we have this here, which I'm going to cover on another video because I don't have enough time to cover it here, but because there's a lot to this. At any rate, we have a guy that was on this particular website that we're on here, right? This website. All right, so see this guy here? You might have remembered him. Okay, look familiar? Yeah, he hasn't made a video in 5 months. And he has been saying a lot of very interesting things. He mentioned that one of his friends is no longer, okay, and that he was taken in for a week by the men in blue, and they were basically, this to him, all right? And he says a lot of other things, okay, that, like I said, it's going to take me a long time to go through that, but it looks very interesting, okay? So I'm going to have to do a video on that. Okay, at any rate, there's that. Okay, so get on to some other stuff here. We have this as well. Now we have 30% of all mortgages will likely nobody will be able to pay them. Potentially, We have this here. Check this out. If I can get this thing to load right. All right, there we go. 30% of all mortgages will potentially default because of the fact that people are not paying their mortgage or their rent or a lot of other things, as you can see here. All right. So that's kind of interesting. It's more than it was in 2008. All right, there's that. Then we have this here. Now, I did a video yesterday covering the fact, there's a lot of people making these videos about NYC, that they've been going to these hospitals, and there's no one that appears to be there really, not a lot of people at least. And I went through the reason why that's likely the case. Of course, but some are pointing out, look, man, the reason why they're making these videos is because the outlets are saying that they have tons of people there, which I agree. That's clearly them just, hyping it up. You know what I mean? But the fact is, we do have yet another thing here. This is kind of interesting. They have this ship, right? And only 20 people are on the ship. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So honestly, though, some people are making some sort of conclusion from this. Oh, there's nothing really going on anywhere. No, that's not really what's going on. I think it's just they're trying to use this to get things done. So they're trying to make it look like, ooh, it's big already, and when it isn't yet here. But it is big, or was big in other places, because I'm going to show you some stuff on that right now. Yeah, check this out. We're talking about people who live in the area where this all started, coming out and talking about it. All right. Now they're saying that it's way bigger. The numbers are way bigger there than the powers that be are saying. Okay. And they're saying up to 100 times, up to 100 times bigger than what they're saying. They're saying anywhere from, what was it? Let's see if I can find this here. Yeah, anywhere from, I think it was like anywhere from 20 to 100 times bigger. They're not, or 10 to 100. They don't even know. They just know what they're saying is not the real, okay? So what we're saying is, they said there's 3,000 that are no longer. They're saying it could be up to 100 times that, which would be 300,000. Now, I don't know what it is. It's anywhere from 50 plus thousand from what I can tell. And just based on like 5 different things I've covered. And also we're talking about the fact that, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, there's a lab that's 3 miles away, and there's more and more coming out that it's probably from that. Even if it's not, okay, it's not, I don't believe it's one of these, but I do think it's from that lab, okay, if that makes sense. All right, so there's that. All right, so then we have this here. This is in Ecuador. Okay, let me show you this really quick. We're talking about them saying that they're in the streets. These are in the streets, all right? And actually, let me show you some pictures, because, a lot of people say stuff. But here we go. We actually have pictures of it as well. So, I mean, it's not like things are not happening. It's just more along the lines of our outlets here are trying to use this to get things done. Okay, if that makes sense. All right. Eventually, we're probably going to be seeing more of that, probably in the next couple weeks. But right now, we're not the same as Europe. We're doing a lot better than them. But at any rate, getting on to some other stuff here. Then we have this here. We have clothing brands such as Vera Bradley, Brooks Brothers, and New Balance that are now creating these, which of course makes sense. Obviously, at this point in time, if they are not making something that the market is asking for, they're going to have to essentially stop working, right? So I was talking about this 3-4 weeks ago. Hey, look, you should change your business to fit whatever is needed at the time. So this is what a lot of companies are doing. You also have it happening as well with GM and Ford. We're talking about creating equipment for hospitals and such, things like that. So that's what's going on with all that, all right? And they're already doing it too. I saw some video of someone making stuff in the factory. All right, so let's get on to some other stuff. We have this as well. Unemployment for those who are actually in a situation where they're not laid off, but they're also not working either. All right, they're under one of these right now. So these people also can have unemployment, according to what I was reading. So that's some good news, obviously. All right. Then we have this here. Let me get over to it. We have people talking about canceling rent. Okay. I was talking about that, I think, a few days ago. Apparently, it's gaining a lot of support. I wonder why. Because people can't pay the rent. Maybe that's why, you know. So a lot of people are asking for them to essentially make it so they don't have to pay rent. And that's what they're doing in NYC. They're actually trying to get that through so that they don't have to do that. All right. All right. And then pretty much that's it. I'm kind of wondering what some of you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.
Today I'm going to show you how to make a superfood that'll last a lifetime without refrigeration. And it's so nutritious, you'll never have to stockpile another food. The food's called pemmican, and it was widely in use by the natives of North America and also by the Western explorers who would go for months without contact with civilization. In the 19th century, even British soldiers had an iron ration of 4 ounces of pemmican. Many of these iron rations were found intact and edible as much as 50 years later. So let's just avert our gaze from modern survival thinking for a minute, and let's think about how the guys who explored the West 150 years ago did it. Now that's exactly the kind of stuff I found in this 350-page book called The Lost Ways. It's probably the only survival book I've actually enjoyed reading, and you won't believe the survival things we've lost to history. Now I found the pemmican recipe on page 48, and I decided to give it a go. Natives used whatever was available to them at the time. Bison, elk, moose, deer, but nowadays people just use what they can buy. You just need to remember to select a low-fat red meat, and beef is perfect for this. So you'll need 6 pounds of beef, 2 pounds of rendered beef tallow, and 1/3 cup of strawberries or blueberries. And that's it. Don't include nuts, seeds, vegetable oils, grains, beans, or dairy products of any kind. Now the first step is to dry the meat and blueberries. First you need to slice the meat very thin. You can use a very sharp knife like this one, or you can keep the beef in the freezer a few hours before slicing it. If you don't have a dehydrator, you can set the oven to the lowest possible temperature, around 130 degrees, and put the strips of meat directly on the rack. So now place a tin foil on the right side of the rack and spread the blueberries out to dry with the meat. Place the rack back inside and crack the oven door to prevent moisture buildup. Let this dry for about 15 hours or until it's crispy. 150 years ago, people dried their meat by building a wooden pyramid over a small fire and hanging the meat slices on that. After 15 hours, this is what you should get. Toss it in the food processor until it becomes a powder. Do the same with the blueberries. In the old days, they grind it with a rock to crush it into a powder. Generally, well-dried meat will weigh just slightly less than 1/3 of its raw weight. Therefore, 6 pounds of raw lean meat will yield about 2 pounds of thoroughly dehydrated meat. For our next step, we need to cut the fat into small pieces about a 1/2 inch square. So place the fat in a pot on the stove and heat it up to a temperature between 225 and 250 degrees. Now, you don't gain anything from getting it any hotter than that, other than destroying the fatty acids, which we want to do as little as possible. Now, for the first 10 minutes, you want to keep this on medium-high heat, and you want to stir it about every minute. And this will allow enough of the fat to be liberated to coat the bottom of the pot without burning the bottom of the fat. After about 10 minutes, you'll see a pool of fat forming on the bottom of the pot, which should be merrily boiling away. You can rest a little bit now and stir it maybe only every 5 minutes, just to keep things well mixed. After about 30 minutes, the liquid fat should have risen enough to cover the chunks, and it should look like a rolling boil. So as this liquid rises, you can go ahead and lower the temperature down to about 230. After about an hour, the major boiling action will have stopped, and there'll just be small bubbles rising from the fat. About 90% of the cracklings will be a chestnut brown in color. So use a strainer to separate these and set them aside with salt to enjoy as snacks later. They're really, really good. And if you don't like them or don't want to eat them, you can set them aside to cool for dog treats. It's a good... Sammy, you want one? Come here. We now have to weigh the amount of ground meat and the amount of rendered animal fat. We have to have the same quantities, so you'll probably have to remove some of the excess fat. Place the remaining fat on the stove. Keep it about 120 degrees. Mix the shredded meat into the melted fat and stir it until it's well blended. Then add the blueberries and mix it again. This is how it should look. The fat should be absorbed or coating the meat fibers. There should be very little or no liquid fat pooling in the bottom of the pot. Now, following the instructions from the Lost Ways, you can store it in Ziploc plastic bags and press flat, removing as much air as possible, and therefore preventing the fat from going rancid. This should keep the pemmican from spoiling for a few years without refrigeration. So let's do that. And here's what I got. Pemmican is the ultimate survival food, no matter if you want to bug out or bug in. 10 pounds of pemmican would supply food for 2 full weeks of camping activities at 3/4 of a pound per day, providing 2,200 calories. In survival mode, the same 10 pounds of pemmican would supply energy for almost a full month. This was just one awesome chapter in the Lost Ways, but you won't believe the survival skills we've lost to history. And that's what this book is all about, saving our forefathers' skills. But I actually realized it's also about saving ourselves from the shallow world that we live in. Click below to find out how you can get your hands on one of the greatest books of this century.